Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you alongside in the car. I think the only reason this video is happening today, literally simply, promised you it would. That's kind of the key here for the Edmonton Oilers. Still nothing really changes day to day yet as we continue to resume the week after the August long weekend, although the speculation around the extensions continues to ramp up. And again, one thing that we need to keep an eye on, and what has not broke yet, is the simple fact that there is a logjam out forward. And for the Oilers, in terms of clearing that cap space, that'll be also important at the trade. There might be still a player yet to go from the roster we currently have assembled at the NHL level. So whether it be Matthias Janmark, whether it be Adam Henrique, whoever you want to say, might be on the chopping block at all ends here. It looks like for the Oilers, at least, according to Bob Stauffer, and again, kind of thoroughly put through our brains over the airwaves over the past several weeks, is the Oilers brass are looking at quite simply making one more move. And then, well, from there, it's competition coming into camp, right? There's a lot more to come from the Edmonton Oilers. So, friends, welcome aboard to Dolynny TV. If you are new to the channel, I would love to have you hit that subscribe button. Obviously, the video is very inconsistent this summer, as with the regular season last year. That's simply just because it's been one heck of a past 12 months, and looking forward to being down at Country Thunder, as I was mentioning yesterday, to get out there and hopefully see the Oilers do some crazy things. I know BVJ was this past weekend. Country Thunder gets underway next weekend here in Calgary. Bailey Zimmerman, the only one, I think, double headlining that. So looking forward to seeing how that weekend progresses. Obviously, I bring that up simply because if you're talking about the trade that's yet to happen here for the Oilers, if you're talking about kind of just the timing and stuff of a potential trade, it comes back to how everything shook down last year, right? The offer sheets were coming due, and Country Thunder was that weekend. Obviously, it was closed out by Sunday, Country Thunder, and Stan Bowman made one heck of a job that weekend, acquiring Vasily Podkolzin, acquiring Emerson. Come on. Yeah, anyway, Ty Emberson. So, yeah, it's kind of one of those situations where I think, we can talk about Connor's extension. We can talk about extensions for Wallman, Ekholm, anybody, right? Stuart Skinner, anybody that's possibly going to get an extension here over the next 6 months. Maybe they're a candidate to get it here in the next 25 days before we enter September. But I think it's all a moot point until you probably get into next weekend and you kind of start, hearing rumblings of when Connor McDavid and the company that follows him to Edmonton for the captain skates are all going to be back in Edmonton to kind of get that underway. Obviously, you usually hear rumblings of that about the 21st, 22nd. So, kind of you're getting into that week after Country Thunder. So you start thinking in terms of that and how that all plays out. You are a solid still 2 weeks away from really getting down to business here for the Oilers again, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, if you're anywhere in Alberta this year specifically, this summer's been up and down with the weather. Lots of rain, heavy storms, usually almost every other day. So it'll be kind of nice if the weather cooperates for a little bit. Get out on the boat, get out on the ball diamonds, and just enjoy some beautiful weather for what should be a good end off to summer here before we get into September, and then really have to get down to focusing on the Edmonton Oilers every single minute of every day again. Really, I think the big thing here for the Oilers, speculating what comes next, is do the Oilers go the approach of signing some other guys before Connor McDavid, signing some extensions and kind of signaling, okay, we're locked in here, and then the big reveals at the end? Or is the big reveal at the start and you sign Connor McDavid and then everybody else gets shuffled off? I feel like, either way you do it, if you're the Oilers trying to sign guys to contracts right now and you try to put them behind Connor or in front of Connor, they're all, here nor there. It's just everybody cares about the Connor McDavid contract. Everybody cares to see kind of how that's going to set things up going forward for the Oilers. And whether you believe in the hockey players making millions of dollars or not, again, it's a numbers game, no matter if you're playing with $2 or $2 million. And for the Oilers, really just seeing how that numbers game plays out and how they decide to chop the deck there and get it going for obviously what is going to be the next probably 8 at minimum 7 years for the franchise if they sign Connor long term, right? Depends if he wants to match with Dry or if he wants to sign the full max term before that's not available anymore in the new CBA. And that's the other side too. The new CBA, that'll be complicating things here right away too. So there is going to be a bunch of stuff coming down the pipe here for the Oilers that's going to really just kind of hit high gear before we even know it. So I think for me, sitting here having promised you this video yesterday and really sitting and trying to comprehend what the best topics to talk about are, speculating what's coming next, is it's kind of silly in the fact that, you know, we're going to have days like this where we just don't talk about much and we just kind of, okay, this is open, this is open, this is what's coming, this is what we're looking for. And then all of a sudden it's just going to drop. And that's what I talk about that Country Thunder weekend for, is once that drops, it does not stop for the next 12 months, basically, you know, until we get back to next August. Because I mean, the Oilers, depending on what they do here over the next 12 months, could really have a different look going into next August than they do now, right? You win the Stanley Cup in June, and I think the focus, the attention, the attentiveness of the fan base almost dials back a little bit because the mission's accomplished, right? Like, okay, job's done. Let's sit back a little bit here. And yeah, that's where, you know, we've been under some extraordinary circumstances dating back to November 2023. Really, had the Oilers, you know, won 5 games prior to the firing of Jay Woodcroft, we're probably not at all looking at any of the chaos that's happened in almost the past 2 years. Like, quite literally, the underperformance of the team to start both years has driven them to where they ended up, and just kind of the hyper focus on the Oilers as Canada's team. And I wonder truly, I guess, from a YouTube perspective, from a perspective I have, I wonder truly if it's going to be a heavily engaged year following the Oilers if they are doing really, really well as expected, or if it's going to be a more heavily engaged year just from a simple standpoint of the expectations are just there. So I'm just checking in to see if the expectations are being met. I don't want to talk about necessarily the negatives, but you know, if there are any negatives, are they doubled down on like the past 2 years, or is it just, you know, this team's going to get you where they're going at the end of the year and it doesn't matter? We'll all be out there in the plazas and the Ice District and the tents and the Ford Hall and watching at the watch parties inside Rogers and sitting on couches all across Alberta having a crazy start to the spring. I don't know how that's all going to play out, quite honestly, and I really am curious to see, because obviously, you know, the fact that we've gone dark basically in Oilers news for probably the better part of the past 2.5 weeks now, since we hired the coaches, is really, I mean, all that's left to do is do the job now. And yeah, okay, last year the tumultuous changes, the giving up the youngsters, moving on from them, and obviously whether that was a mistake or not, and that gets proven maybe otherwise because we end up in the same exact spot no matter what. And really, Connor and Leon don't have the Stanley Cup finals that you think they should to try and win a cup. So, you know, at the end of the day, I guess one thing is, and I want to make mention of this before I speculate too much further on anything else, is we're getting into ranking season, right? The top players, the top wingers, the top defensemen. I know back in like early July, the top defense analytics wise was rated, and it was the Edmonton Oilers, to all our shock. But really, you look at it from a pure perspective, the Oilers have players in the top echelon of everything, when it comes to defense, right? Bouchard's one of the top offensive defensemen. You got, you know, Leon and Connor, the top 2 centers in the league, top 2 players in the league, depending on the moment, depending on the week. You've got Zach Hyman, who on the NHL Network top 20 wingers wasn't even mentioned, and maybe recency bias because of the injury, but you got to talk about him as one of the most elite net front presences in the NHL. So there's going to be a whole bunch of debate around that, and really giving airtime to that in anything other than this video is kind of silly, because nobody really cares what somebody else's opinion is of a rankings chart unless you're doing a full-length podcast and throw that in there. But Friends, yeah, ranking season's coming up. Contracts are coming up, as Epiphany mentions, right? The wedding's this weekend. Similar to some unfortunate events with Johnny Gaudreau and the passing there last summer, kind of held things up for Leon Draisaitl. You're going to see some things hold up the signings this summer as well. And of course, that's the tough part too. We're coming up, I think, somewhere close. I like personally. So sorry if I've got my dates wrong, but we're coming up somewhere close on the 1 year passing of Johnny Gaudreau, and that's going to be a sad, probably a few days in the NHL. So really, it's been a year, and the Oilers have done another season of Stanley Cup Final hockey. So we're going to see what year number 3 of this Open Cup window brings. But friends, I don't want to waste any more time. Thank you for hanging out tonight. I'm going to catch you, and I'm up on out of here.